Voting meeting. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. I'm going to briefly take off my mask so that members of the public and fellow county commissioners can hear me. We have a number of items tonight. As has been the case during the COVID pandemic, this is a remote session, and we're coming to you from Holmes Cross, Athens, and for myself and Manager Williams here at City Hall. I need to note that online comments on this agenda that were received by 5 o'clock will be entered into the record for the meeting tonight. We're going to begin, as we always do, with a roll call from Clerk Spratlin.
Davenport. Here. Davenport. Parker. Here.
Here.
Blink.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
Denson.
Here.
Naismith.
Present.
Edwards.
Present.
Harrod.
Present.
Thornton. Hamby.
Hamby is here, Clerk Spratlin.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right. Given that we have a quorum, next order of business is approval of the minutes of Tuesday, April 7th, Tuesday, April 14th, and Tuesday, April 21st. I'd entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I've got a motion for approval of those minutes from Commissioner Denson. I have a second from Commissioner Davenport. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of approval of those minutes?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes of those meetings are approved. Moving on, I'd like to ask the clerk, are there written communications regarding any matter this evening?
No, we have none.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. We move forward now to our consent agenda. These are items number 1 through 10 on the agenda. Would any commissioner like to remove an item from consent?
I'd like to remove items 2 and 7.
All right. Madam Clerk, 2 and 7 from Commissioner Parker. Would any other commissioner like to remove an item from consent? All right. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. 8 has been removed from the agenda altogether.
So moved.
Mr. Mayor, there's one ordinance.
If you could read that for me, Attorney Drake, I appreciate it.
Yes, it's item number 1 of the sewer use ordinance amendment. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to sewer use requirements and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I appreciate it. All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright.
I'll second the motion.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright, a second from Commissioner Naismith. All in favor of approval of consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries and the consent agenda is approved. All right. We're going to move forward now to those items of old and new business. And we also have a public hearing regarding the Community Development Block Grant. We'll actually go ahead and take care of that first. We'll take care of item number 11, the public hearing and deliberation regarding the Community Development Block Grant. We had opportunities set up down in the chambers for any live public input, given that that's a requirement of the Community Development Block Grant annual action plan approval process. I've gotten no indication that there is any member of the community who's come to the chamber for that. So I'd certainly move forward to any commission discussion. Again, this is item number 11. Yes.
I am on the call. I'm running a little bit late. I've been talking back and forth to Blaine. I want to make sure when we're talking about the community block grant money, which community block grant money are we talking about for clarity for me?
So this is our standard FY21 package.
Okay.
That's about $1.4 million. So this is not the COVID-related CARES Act Community Development Block Grant program. I've been in regular communication with Manager Williams and Assistant Manager Lonan, and we haven't gotten either absolute direction on prospective use of those funds or the funds themselves. So we'll be having a separate conversation about those COVID-related CDBG funds that are a separate pot. The first delivery of which they have told us will be about $830,000 for Clarke County.
Okay, so this is our regular
Correct.
one. Okay, I'm good.
I move for approval.
I second.
All right. Any further conversation? All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, Clerk Spratlin. I've got a second from Commissioner Thornton. Madam Clerk, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're going to move forward then, and we'll handle old and new business, including those two items that were removed from the consent agenda. So we'll start with item number 2. And Commissioner Parker, you asked for this to be removed, so I'll go ahead and ask you to go ahead and kick off conversation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions. The first kind of helps establish context for the second. So, Manager Williams, could you talk a little bit about what the economic impact of COVID-19 has been on our transit system?
Sorry, I was on mute. It's caused us to operate differently, obviously. The grant in question tonight, or the grant that we found out about recently, will cover all of our operating expenses beginning in January going on. Some of the impacts that we've had, we've had to reduce bus service. We've had to clean extra. We've had some folks work overtime as we've had some vacancies. We've had people out for both COVID and non-COVID related issues. So there's been a number of impacts on the operation from the whole response.
Okay. It's just for me to kind of wrap my head around where these funds are going, because I noticed that in attachment 1 under number 1 in the resolves, it says that these funds may be used for paying administrative leave for transit personnel due to reduced operations during an emergency. I know that the mayor has discussed, I believe, some paid time off for transit workers to help compensate for the ways they've been putting themselves on the line during this time. And I was wondering if some of this funding might be able to be used for hazard pay.
Yes. So no, you're right. And what we've done in a traditional emergency, which is usually weather related and very short, we do close workstations, and folks that are not able to come to work because we close workstations, we do pay those folks. This doesn't last very long. In this case, the threat has been long lasting, and so we've created a COVID pay line item, but we have worked very hard, our department directors, HR, so that people are doing work at home, whether it's teleworking or doing some other task. To that point that you made, Commissioner, about administrative leave. So in those cases where we were paying somebody to work from home or do another task, I believe that would be eligible for reimbursement by this grant. So that's the answer to that question. And yes, we've been looking very hard at hazard pay or hazard time off. I think that if it was an administrative cost of transit, and we can check this out with the FTA and GDOT, we believe that would be reimbursable. But there are many other departments that are also subjecting themselves to this that we are considering. So to answer your question, yes, we believe that the transit portion of that hazard pay, hazard time off would be eligible for federal expense. But I would caution you that we should do something that would be equitable for all departments that find themselves in that position.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I was just wondering. That being said, I'm happy that we've been able to make use of this grant, and I would like to motion to approve.
And I would just, sorry.
I'll second. Go ahead.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Parker and a second from Commissioner Link. Go ahead, Manager Williams.
I was just going to say, I just want to give kudos to Butch McDuffie and the transit staff for really going after this and being proactive as they always are.
Thank you. Any other input on this item before we hold a vote? Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor. Blaine, yeah, actually, just to follow up, a little bit of the line that Commissioner Parker was bringing up. Because I'm assuming that we're definitely expecting and have seen some loss in fair revenue here. But I'm assuming that this obviously this grant is going to greatly exceed any losses that we are experiencing or expect to be experiencing. Correct?
Well, I think we need to have this spent by June 30th of next year, if I'm not mistaken. So there are a lot of revenues that we don't know about yet. So I do know that all of this money is for operating and capital. There are some capital needs we have that we could certainly expend those funds, and the operating it's yet to be seen with the upcoming uncertainty.
Okay, so that's good. So I mean, if we end up not seeing quite as much of a loss, we could use this for capital expansions, potentially using some of this money towards like a west side transfer station, or looking into that.
Yes, and there's other capital needs as well we could discuss.
Okay. And then on that, I know that we recently moved back our service to cut off at 7 p.m. rather than the normal 9:45. Would us getting this funding allow us, and would it make sense for us to put that back so that we're making sure that we have transit service available for people working later shift jobs and stuff like that? Or what's the expectation of us going back to that later night service?
Well, we're on the summer service now. We transitioned to that, I think, last week, which I think you're referring to. That's typically what we do when UGA is not in session, but we still pick up our regular riders. We can bring to the mayor and commission, based on the conditions which we've never seen before, the lower ridership, that type of thing, with some different alternatives if that's something you're interested in.
Okay, yeah, just maybe just to see what that would look like, especially since we have this funding now, and if it would make sense for us to offer that. Be interested to see. But with that, yeah, I appreciate those questions. I'm very excited to see this move forward.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, it sounds like somebody has some wind interference or something in their microphone. I'm having a hard time hearing. I don't know if people aren't talking, if they could please mute their speaker. Thank you.
All right. I think that did it. All right. All right. So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Parker, a second from Commissioner Link. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, motion carries. And we're going to move on then to item number 7, which is a change order for the Winterville section of the Firefly Trail project. So, Commissioner Parker, go right ahead.
All right, I'm back. So, under history number 18, it states that on March 9th, 2020, the contractor and geotechnical engineer notified ACC Gov that it had encountered unsuitable soils, which may require removal and replacement with suitable soils and other suitable backfill material. I know that along a nearby portion of the trail, particularly the section that runs along Little Oak Street, there has been a fence erected to keep people from traversing properties adjacent to the trail and entering the trail directly, creating the impression among some in the area that the trail is meant as a pass-through for individuals from other parts of the county, and that it discourages use for residents living nearby. And my understanding of that has been that the fence was erected because of some soil contamination along the trail, which this document seems to support. And I wanted to clarify if that was the case here, and pitch that over to the manager.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker. So the change order, so I want to get contamination. That brings a pretty dire idea along with it. In this case, it's simply that the soil is unsuitable soils is the term that we're using here. And it means that the soil is so wet that it is non-compactable. Okay, so it's just, do you sit there, do you delay the project until you dry out the soil, which could take a very long time if you've had a lot of rain, or do you just take the wet soil out, put dry soil in, and get to work? And that's really what's being suggested here, that we have very saturated soils.
Got it.
So in regards to the fencing, there's several purposes for fencing, and we don't prefer to have fencing if we can help it because it just adds expense to the project. But if slopes adjacent to the trail are steep, we recommend fencing for safety purposes. If they were part of the negotiated land acquisition process, so if the property owner said, we want a fence through here and we're trying to get the easement without condemnation, we might work through that. We do use fence sometimes to reduce unexpected interactions. If people stepping out into the trail while folks are coming down, and fences can help guide users to the direction that we want them to head in. So we'll be glad to look at any access points and try to work with something there. Maybe there's steps, but the fences are more safety related. They're not meant to be exclusive.
So safety related meant to, in the sense of folks that may be trying to access the trail through a really steep incline, them potentially endangering themselves in that manner?
Or people leaving the trail going down a steep incline, probably more.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
If there's steps that there could be some small steps that we can get up in a very thin way to get onto the trail. I mean, we could look at things like that if that's the issue.
Okay. Yeah. I think the residents of the area would really appreciate that. And I appreciate you clarifying some of what this change order is about, as well as what some of the impetuses have been for the fencing along that area. That is very near the portion of the trail we're talking about tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I'll say I'm familiar with that segment of the trail that Commissioner Parker is referencing. I think it's sort of partway between Inglewood and Dublin Street.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of areas where it does seem that the topography might allow some relatively short span of steps so that people who come through that segment of the neighborhood would not have to go all the way west to Inglewood or all the way east to Dublin. So, if staff could just examine that. And I know obviously we've just discussed the next segment of the trail that's going to extend from the current terminus by the under construction fueling station out to approximately Hancock Industrial. So, maybe that could be something done in conjunction.
Yes, we will look into that.
Okay. And I just want to confirm to dispel any ideas that might be in the community. There's no sort of hazardous materials or anything in that Little Oak section of the trail that people should be concerned about?
That's my understanding. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Well, I'm happy about the improvements, as long as we're making sure that it remains an inclusive space, and anything we can do to help folks that live in the area feel invited to use it, and make sure it's safe for folks to use. I'm happy with, so I'll motion that we approve.
Well, and let me clarify one thing too, because I think the good news is we've got several trail projects moving forward, but in two different segments of the Firefly Trail. So the change order for the unsuitable soils has to do with the Winterville section.
Winterville section, correct? Yeah.
And then the extension under the loop and out to Winterville Road, that's a separate bid that will be approved later.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Just for the public's benefit.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I've got a motion from Commissioner Parker. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Parker, a second from Commissioner Link. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. We have put number 7 to bed. All right. We're going to move on to old business item number 12. This is revision to our Athens-Clarke County Code concerning lost or stolen property. Attorney Drake, is there an ordinance to read associated with this? Attorney Drake, I just unmuted you. Is there an ordinance with item number 12?
Yes, there is. I'll read it now. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to abandoned property and for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney. All right. Let's see, Commissioner Denson?
No, I'm good.
Okay. See, Commissioner Edwards, I see your hand up on the icon. Any comment on this item?
No, sir.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah. I proposed a CDO for this because I had some concerns about making sure that the public was as aware as possible of this process. And I'm hoping everybody had a chance to take a look at it. Basically, it just provides a couple steps for ACCPD as well as our central services to make sure that the information about this process gets up on the website. When this item came up, I did a quick search on our website and couldn't find any information about, what I would do if I thought I had a piece of something of mine got stolen. And there's no information about the whole auction process either. So I propose that we add under an E under section 311-1, add the letter E, Athens-Clarke County Police shall maintain a publicly accessible summarized announcement of this process as well as the process outlined in 311-2 on the public announcements page of their website and circulate this information via social media on a quarterly basis. Basically just leaving a standing announcement on their announcements page that this process exists. If anybody out there has a piece of lost property or stolen property, they might want to check with ACCPD and see if they have it. I also propose that we add the sentence to the letter B under section 311-2, which is the section that covers what happens to the property once it's turned over to central services. And section B outlines that central services will publish a notice of sale in the local newspaper, as well as put a copy of the notice up in the courthouse for 30 days prior to the sale. I feel like in this day and age, we really need to put this notice out via online sources as well. So I add the sentence, the notice of such sale with a link to the property descriptions, time, date, place, and terms of sale shall be posted on the ACC Civic Alerts webpage 30 days prior to the sale, with social media alerts circulated via the Public Information Office once a week until the date of the sale. I just feel like this makes it, brings us into the 21st century with this process, and assures that the general public knows that this is what happens to property that doesn't seem to have a home, and this is how you might be able to retrieve it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see Commissioner Harrod's hand. Oh, nope. It's from a former item. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I apologize. I missed that this commission defined option was in the packet, so I didn't get to ask some questions about it. What would be I'm concerned, Melissa, you might have found this out. I mean, Commissioner Link, the amount of time that staff time would be involved for this on this monthly update. I think we talked a little bit about the process as it is, and it's a lot of items. Did you get any feedback for this on?
I mean, from what I understand, and maybe the manager can hop in here, this is just the standing list is already required. I mean, I'm not requiring any additional list. It's just a notice of what's already been compiled. Just adding a notice to the website of what's already compiled. This doesn't ask that list, that terminology about the link to the property descriptions, time, date, place, blah blah blah, terms of sale. That's from the previous sentence. The process already entails the notice of sale shall give a full and complete description of the property to be sold, time, date, place, and terms of sale, and state that the property to be sold was lost or stolen and recovered. So it's just, there is no additional, my intention was not to create any additional work in compiling data. It's simply asking our PIO to put a notice up and make sure that it, circulated via social media through our regular circulation process. So the manager might want to add something to that. Blaine, do you foresee any additional data crunching going on here or listing?
I think there is some extra work for some staff, but I don't think it's manageable.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't intend for there to be any extra compilation of lists. The list I'm referring to in the sentence that I add is the same list that already exists and is referred to in the previous sentence.
So this is highlighting the visibility of what already exists.
Well, and
Yeah,
let me
basically just repeat what already exists.
Well, let me say this too, that, currently central services staff, they do auction all the items under $5,000. That's approved by the manager's office. Anything over 5,000 goes to y'all. And they have one staff member dedicated half time to moving that surplus property. So central services really can't take the lead on notification requirements, but they can provide the PIO with those proposed auction dates if either party has the staffing to serve in that role. So, we will, it will be some impact on the departments to do that, but we can make that happen.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion of this item? All right. Would you like to put a motion on the floor, Commissioner?
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt it.
I'll second it.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Wright. All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion for the commission to find option carries. All right. We're going to move on to item number. All right. We're going to move on to item number 13. All right. Commissioner Thornton, is your hand up for 13? All right, I'm going to move on to Commissioner Parker.
I think Commissioner Thornton may have been muted. I saw her speaking, maybe. Commissioner Thornton, did you have anything?
No, I think I'm messing up everybody, but no, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I wanted to start off by thanking the mayor and the manager's office for doing the work of reaching out to Department of Corrections to see if there's any way we can make this practice more ethical. And Commissioner Wright for working with us to see if there's a way that we could do something around reduced sentencing for folks to take part in this this program. Unfortunately, we did not hear back from the Department of Corrections about the potential of paying inmates for the labor that they give our community. And I have made pretty clear throughout discussion of this agenda item that I am not supportive. I don't think we should look at the situation and say, hey, GDOT wants to give us free money. Why not take it? I understand that it's really tempting given the general austerity that we're living in. But we have to look at this choice in the context of the history of inmate labor in our country and the fact that the 13th Amendment's provision for involuntary servitude as allowable as a condition of imprisonment was an inherently racist provision that was put in place to ensure a predominantly Black and brown undercast in our society. At the end of the day, this is an unethical practice, one that we are one of only 4 states left out of 50 in the country that choose to employ this practice because our state government doesn't value human life and dignity in some ways. And we shouldn't, in my opinion, allow the decisions that we make to be dictated by their morality. I understand if the Department of Corrections wants to turn a deaf ear to our asks of implementing a pilot program around inmate stipends for labor. But I think we have to keep speaking out about this, and I'm not really willing to take no for an answer here. We've been ahead of the curve in a lot of other respects, and I think we can be ahead of the curve here by putting our foot down and saying, no, we will not take part in modern day slavery. And I also want to just go ahead and dismiss arguments that incarcerated individuals prefer servitude to sitting in a cage, because that's inherently a coerced choice that they have to make. Giving incarcerated people the choice between staying in a cage and having their labor exploited is comparable to asking a person that you've starved if they want to eat grass or mud. You're disrespecting and disregarding that person's basic dignity in forcing that choice. And so in sum, I think that just because someone else wants to pay the overseer does not make slavery justifiable. And that is what we are voting on tonight. And I would like to make a motion that we deny this agenda item. think you might be muted, Kelly.
I am. Yes, I was turning it over to Commissioner Denson. I saw your hand.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I echo what Commissioner Parker is saying here. I really do feel like we need to be pushing back against what the Georgia Department of Corrections is doing here. And as Commissioner Parker said, of only 3 other states that are still doing this, all of those states being former Confederate states with quite a history of slavery and forced labor. And and there's a second concern here too about our if we don't have some kind of check here, which we should be paying these individuals. That's what it comes down to. That's what we're talking about here. Is that if we're going to bring in, how much money is this going to be? Is this contract for? And what this contract is really for is to, increase the amount of inmate labor that we can have to add work to our county. And we get money for this. We're getting money from this grant here. Yet none of that money is going to the laborers who are actually doing the work. That must be remedied. And I understand that, and I appreciate Mayor Gertz and my fellow commissioners for pushing forward for this and trying to pursue this. I feel like we need to lead the way on this state. We need to push as hard as we possibly can. We need to show why this needs to happen. And we need to also keep in check our dependency on this free labor source. As I was looking at the most recent proposed budget from the mayor, in 2015, we had 158,000 hours from inmates on our inmate labor program. In 2019, we have 302,000. We have nearly doubled this in the last 5 years, and not even 5 years. To me, that shows a troubling dependency on this workforce to do. What were we? That extra 144,000 hours. Who was providing that work 4 years ago? And so I think we need to have a bit of a check on that too. And I think by us putting in place a stipend program for these inmates who are doing this work will help us do that. Of course, but also giving them some funding so when they are released from jail, they have some money that can pay towards their legal financial obligations. They can use as potentially a down payment to get a house when they get out of prison. That basically give them some financial structure there to work for. And I want to be very clear. I do want us to have some kind of work program where people can get out and do something because while I agree with Mariah Parker to somehow say that they love doing this work is just not true. They love getting out of their jail cell. So I do want to make sure that we are still having those possibilities there. We have to be compensating for it. We have to be compensating for our labor. It is unjust, immoral for us not to compensate for labor. Because of that, because we're not able to compensate this, I'll go ahead and second Commissioner Parker's motion that we go ahead and deny this based on the principle that this funding is not actually going towards the laborers who are going to be performing the work.
Thanks, Commissioner Denson. See, Commissioner Wright.
Thanks. I guess I kind of wish that we had still gotten more information. And we've talked about this for several sessions, and unless I missed it in all the we are regarding the time release benefit for their service. I don't think that's going to change where we are on this point. And I guess the other input I would like to hear from the manager on is the work that is being done here. Do we have jurisdiction for our crews to do the work on the loop that that is covered by this work assignment within our government?
So what I want, let me take your first question, and this idea of good time credit, that really relates to the sheriff's department. And just for the public's benefit, we have the jail, which is over, the sheriff, that's part of his operations. And that's where people go for the most part for sort of temporary disposition before going to the court system. Although there are some folks that may serve out a misdemeanor sentence there. So for those of there that do spend some time there, they are given 2 days credit for every day served, or up to 4 days of credit for somebody that provides a service in the jail, which includes laundry details, janitorial work, or food service assistance. So that's the jail. The prison, really the state of Georgia, any type of early release is deferred to the Board of Pardons and Parole. So they control that whole situation. So those are two different operations. I did want to speak to Commissioner Denson's point, and just so that everybody understands, the department takes very seriously, the corrections department, the rehabilitation of the inmates. And Commissioner Denson quoted the hours going up. And that's a function of two things. We have been trying to bring more inmates here, and we have also been trying to transition offenders into returning citizens, and that's one of the primary goals of the department. And so going back to 2016, the diversion center, so the idea is that our staff works closely with the Department of Corrections, and for folks that live in this area that are getting near the end of their sentence, we request that they be transferred back to Athens-Clarke County, and they undergo some classes. Let's say they're 18 months out from finishing their sentence, and we'll spend a few months, helping to condition them, and then we transition them to the diversion center. Okay, so they go from the prison proper facility nearby to the diversion center, and our staff helps to find them a job, and then they are able to go and work during the day but report back to the diversion center. And in this way, in 2016, there were 4 that were selected out of the 120 inmates. The following year, the pilot program was extended to 14 individuals, and then today we've got 40 individuals that are in there, and the goal is to get 80. So part of the hours that were quoted there are actually pretty positive in that we're trying to transition people so they have a steady job and a paycheck, and hopefully if they're staying with us, they've been able to go through classes on how to manage that money and actually have a little bit of a nest egg when they actually get out. And y'all do know that we have cognitive programs. We've got the welding to work program. So there's a lot of training that goes on within the prison walls as well. And I will say that our staff is committed to rehabilitation and transition.
See, I see Commissioner Harris.
I just had a question from the manager, because you did send a memo to us on Thursday, I think it was. So the Department of Corrections has basically said they will not allow us to pay inmates. Is that correct?
Our staff has talked with the Department of Corrections. That's the indication that they have to look at their entire system statewide, and they are the Department of Corrections inmates that we manage with an agreement with the state.
Okay. So regardless of what we may or may not desire to do, the fact of the matter is at present we would not be able to implement some kind of payment scheme.
Well, I think that what I understand, Commissioner Harrod, and I think Mayor Gertz articulated it well, staff is ready to come up with some way, working through you and with the Department of Corrections, if the intent is to have folks better prepared to transition back into society. We can come back with some very specific ideas and also check with our state officials to make sure that this is a system that can work together. So that's something that I can pledge on behalf of our staff if that's what many of you are interested in.
And just as a follow-up, I've recommended a work session this summer so that we could look at what those enhanced conduits would be from incarceration to work in the diversion center. What the state terms that is a TC or transition center experience. So, where one is working for pay, but kind of sleeping in the dormitory style, living at night, to kind of fully reintroduced into the community, and ideally with some supports. And so what we want to do is make sure that that path is as smooth as possible. So as many of those individuals who come here for the inmate experience toward the end of their time do have, what we sometimes call a warm handoff when they get back into the community, and have that training and have the job waiting for them.
And I'd like to also, just since we're on the topic, if I might, Mayor, in the budget that the mayor proposed, we do contemplate hiring somebody to help train folks in our fleet maintenance facility. So inmates that come there, rather than just changing tires or brakes or that type of thing, we can actually train them to be mechanics with the hope that they'll work for us when their sentence wears off. And if we don't have vacancies, then perhaps they can find employment with some local dealerships here as well, or self-employment.
See Commissioner Neesmith's hand.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we were to turn this down, refuse this deal with Department of Corrections, what would their response be? Would they remove part of the inmate population here in the Department of Corrections? What do you think they would do? Anybody? Mr. Manager?
I can't speculate, sir. I know our staff has tried to work closely with them. I'm not sure. I can't say.
Commissioner Neesmith, knowing just a little bit about the system, having worked with students who are incarcerated in Department of Corrections facilities, what I would anticipate is that the 6 or 8 folks associated with this crew would shift to another location elsewhere in the state.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
And I'm gonna circle back around. Yeah, Commissioner Thornton.
Yes. If we maybe I should ask Manager Williams. I like the ideas that you said we could do, or your staff would work towards. Is there any other monies when we go and look at budget that would be eligible to pay inmates if it didn't come out of this grant? Do we have another pot of money that we could pay people that would not come out of this grant?
Well, and this is a question that y'all posed that I owed you an answer on. And so our understanding from GDOT is that these funds would not be eligible for paying the inmates. And I know that's not your question, Commissioner Thornton, but I'm not sure that the issue is so much the funding, because I know that would be something that y'all would find if you needed it. I think it's just that the Department of Correction, that's not part of their current policy statewide.
I guess my point is, because I do have a problem with this grant, but what I'm trying to figure out from you and the mayor and my fellow commissioners, if we can't use that pot of money when we get into budget, do we have another pot of money somewhere that's not attached to gratuities or any other legal? Are there other monies that we could generate to pay for inmates for their labor?
Well, if you're asking for eligible funds, I think any of your general fund money would be eligible for that expense. I can't speak to the legality of it. I just don't think that the current Department of Corrections procedures allows that. Now, again, as Mayor Gertz ask, if there are is there training, is there programs, is there skills that we can equip folks with to help them be successful when they leave? Those are things that there are state and federal programs dealing with reentry programming that we can take advantage of. I know that the Department of Corrections has been very positive about partnering with us to provide some more skills training, some resources towards that. And if they're local, the reentry programming can extend even after they walk outside the prison, is my understanding. So these are all things that we can work on with your direction, and if you can help us understand where you want to go with that.
What if we considered even using that $150,000 on with the workforce development money that's been sitting to the side for a while? I mean, that's just an example.
So part of that would be to hire a workforce development coordinator. And we're talking budget now, just for everybody's understanding. And we've held off on that, trying to understand what exactly that person would do. And that has been changing, and especially in terms of the COVID response, because now this idea of the Athens Community Corps and perhaps Neighbors Helping Neighbors are grassroots workforce development efforts. And so that person would help with that. So that's one part of the $150,000. We also envision paying for, I mentioned a person that is a trainer at Fleet in mechanics would be paid for partially out of that funding as well. So we do have some uses for that funding. And we hope to increase it not only for our citizens who need to improve their lot in life, but also our returning citizens as well.
I guess, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Manager Williams. I know you just gave us your suggestions and your recommendations, but we have not voted on any of that you just said. Those are your recommendations. But what I'm asking, if you didn't have those recommendations, is that a pot of money that could have been used to pay inmates for their labor?
Well, again, I can't speak to the legality of paying the inmates, but what I've said is that the Department of Corrections policies don't allow that. So to answer your question directly, the funds, I believe, could be used for those purposes, notwithstanding anything the attorney may say on that. So yes.
Although, Manager Williams, I mean, to be clear, the Department of Corrections has not approved any compensation for inmates at any of their facilities. So, I mean, I think part of Commissioner Thornton's question is, could we deliver the funds to that purpose? And the answer may be yes, but would they accept the funds for that purpose given their program? And the answer to that seems no. So, I just want that to be clear for everybody. I've got Commissioner Link and then Commissioner Hamby.
Yeah. First of all, has there been any quantification of the training and what it would cost if someone out there in the community were to pay for this training and all these programs that these folks are enrolled in that prepare them for a life outside of incarceration? Because I'm kind of wondering, what is the value of that they are getting through this program, and what would be their situation if this program didn't exist? Would they even be reintroduced to Athens-Clarke County, or would they be sitting in a state prison down in Milledgeville somewhere?
And I think that's a good point. The Department of Corrections here wants to rehabilitate folks and transition them well. And there's a lot of great things going on out there right now in partnership with Athens-Tech and through our diversion center. And, we can brief you on all of that. And if there's ways that you want to make that better, our intent is not, enslaved labor. It is bringing folks back and beginning to transition them back once they've paid their debts to society. That is the intent of our corrections department and our staff. and we can do that with your direction on how you want to refine those programs.
Okay. I also have a question about payment. The Department of Corrections might not accept our money to pay these folks, but if we were to, we do keep track of how many hours they put in towards work that benefits Athens-Clarke County. If we were to create our own program that they could enter an exit through which they would be compensated for the work that they already did for us, and as kind of a transitional program into the general workforce. Could we somehow come up with a means of compensation in the aftermath of their release through which they would continue to work for us, but be compensated kind of in retrospect as well?
That'd be something I'd love to talk to the warden and the attorney about before I spoke on that.
Because I feel like this is a really valuable program, and these folks are getting, valuable service, valuable training, and valuable benefits, through the mental health benefits and the educational benefits. And these are all things that have monetary value. But yeah, they do leave these programs often with some monetary obligations. And if there was some way for us to recognize that the labor that they're putting in probably is worth above and beyond the monetary value of the services that they're getting, we need to, figure out that the equity of that. But if there was a way for us to keep track of those labor hours, quantify the value of the services of the programs that they are getting. Because if I wanted to learn to weld, I'd have to pay a whole lot of money to go through a training program to do that. But, if we could somehow crunch the numbers and recognize the true value of the services they're getting, because they're not getting any value sitting in a prison in Milledgeville and being released without any of this training and with no direction towards, an actual paid job and appropriate transition into their home community. I feel like there is some value to this program, but yes, the unpaid labor is a serious ethical issue. And if we can come up with a means to, even if the Department of Corrections won't take our money to give to these folks, if we can come up with a further transitional program which does fill in that gap in compensation.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to move on to Commissioner Hamby and then Commissioner Neesmith.
Thank you, Mayor. I was sitting here thinking these truly are strange times, because I think, and I agree with what Commissioner Link just commented on. Commissioner Link, you made some good points. My question about this is this something we can hold until we have this work session to figure out what it is that Manager Williams is saying we could do, and it seems to be some questions that need to be answered, and it'd be great to have that opportunity to do that, because I certainly see both sides of all of this. So we want to make the best and make sure folks who want a second chance are able to get it. So, Manager Williams, is there a way we can put this on hold?
Manager Williams, when do we need to either kind of affirmatively act on this grant or not?
And let me respond to that too. But let me just say that if we're trying to line this up for the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1, and I'd have to talk with GDOT about delay. But so what we have is a grant to pay for an officer to oversee some of the inmates that we currently have to pick up litter along our roads. It's a grant opportunity. Everything that we've talked about today and before now has bigger implications for the prison and for the people that are coming in and out of there. You may want to just go ahead and act on this grant one way or the other. I mean, we're committed to good outcomes for our inmates and working closely with you. If you want to hold the grant, we can ask GDOT about that. I don't have a ready answer as to. how long they'll wait on that.
Follow up, Commissioner Hamby.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we hold this until next month.
Second. Let me tell you why I'm seconding. We're between, this is a real quandary. We want to correct a bad thing. We're not in the position to correct it because it's a state policy issue. So all we can do at this point tonight is to refuse to be a part of it. I had rather, and I'm pretty sure most of you feel this way, I'd rather be part of a solution rather than just saying, I will not be a part of this. I think Commissioner Link's ideas are really remarkable. We haven't talked about those before. I would like for us to have time to explore that. I would like for us to not throw our hands up yet. If we were to vote tonight for the motion to deny, I would vote for that. But I would like to table it so that we can have some more time. And I think we have time. We're in, what are we in now? what month is May? To get this ready for the fiscal year one way or the other. So I support Mike's motion.
Mayor?
Circle back. I saw Commissioner Denson's hand, and I wanted to make sure I got you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had a couple of clarifying questions to Manager Williams. Manager Williams, you're saying that the diversion center hours are included in those total hours that are in the budget. And that doesn't seem the 302,000, because from how I'm reading this, it's recording those as hours that are valued to Athens-Clarke County Unified Government, I believe.
Well, my understanding with the warden is that not necessarily all the diversion center hours, but the transition center hours, which are folks that do work through the diversion center. I can clarify that though, and again, given in advance, I can research those things.
Okay, yeah, I would appreciate it, because like how I'm reading this is it has like the total cost of value to Athens-Clarke County Unified Government, and that value has also doubled at the same time across that 2015 to 2019, leading me to believe that 302,000 hours is hours that are, lacking a better word, like billed to Athens-Clarke County Unified Government.
So there is a function that the number of inmates has been increased over time as we've tried to bring more people, to Athens-Clarke County. So that is a function. That is partially a function, sir. You're correct.
Okay. And just on a couple of other points, like going back to Commissioner Link's talk about mental health care and all those things that we definitely should be doing. Those things should be part of any rehabilitation program, which is supposed to be the central tenet to what our corrections is doing. But that is very different than what we're talking about here, which is a very specific funding program to pick up litter on the roadways that will be for a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 10 offenders, as this contract says. So I definitely want us to do all of those things. I know we already are doing all of those things, and that's fantastic. And I am excited to see us increase us do more of that training, do more of that care as part of the rehabilitation. But I do not think that at all, like, again, those things should be happening for the inmates who are doing the inmate labor program and also the inmates who are not. That should not be something that we should not be holding at rehabilitation saying, well, go out there and pick up some litter if you want this rehabilitation. So I think that we need to be doing both of those things, and it's very important. So I'm fine with us going and putting this on hold if we're able to, so we can get more information here. But it looks like that seriously important part of this, which is that we are going to be utilizing a service that does not compensate for the labor being provided to the county, is going to be fixed. Although I hope that over this next month, if we put it on hold, that we can continue that conversation with the Department of Corrections.
I've got Commissioner Thornton and then Commissioner Link.
I'm happy with putting this on hold. I would not have supported this. I think this gives us.
Yeah. Wait.
I think. Huh?
Commissioner Thornton, go ahead and continue.
Okay, and I would like for Manager Williams to look at we discussed this early on about when we were talking about the prosperity package. I would like to look at IDAs maybe as a resource to pay people as something innovative that we could do. We talked about it. We had a little bit of information, but this might be an opportunity because I do agree with Commissioner Denson. We need that mental health piece, definitely, but we still need to make sure that people are compensated so they can deal with mental health. I think this, if Manager Williams would also look at the possibility of what an IDA how this could possibly fit when we discuss it again, I would appreciate it.
And Commissioner Thornton, when you say IDA,
individual development account.
Development account. Okay.
And circling back to Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I'd like to see some information on the recidivism rate of some of these folks, and also some actual firsthand testimony from folks that have been through this program. I mean, I feel like we're having this discussion about a program that none of us has any firsthand experience with, and likely doesn't even know anyone who has any firsthand experience with it. So if we could, ask, folks who've gone through this program to just submit us some iPhone videos, testimony, or audio testimony about their experience with it, so we can understand, that there are certainly benefits to it, in that they are getting training and are getting, an appropriate transition back into their home community. Quite frankly, I would rather be close to my loved ones and able to communicate with them than in a prison in South Georgia somewhere. And we can get an idea of I feel like we want these folks back in our community. We want to bring people closer to their families so they can make that transition back. I fear that by denying this program, we could do more harm than good if these folks weren't able to get that opportunity. So I think we need to be really careful, and develop a means by which we can come up with our own way of compensating, even if it doesn't go through the Department of Corrections.
And I would say too, Commissioner, that you may get an invitation to attend some of these graduations, whether it's a GED or a welding to work out at prison. I've been to some. I know the mayor's been to some. I'd urge you to go to those because they're very uplifting, and you can talk firsthand with these folks and hear from them about their experience.
Commissioner Parker?
Put on hold.
Unmute you there. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also okay with putting this on hold to work out specifically what a program would look like that would give some benefit to the folks that are doing this work after their time served. But I also want to reiterate that any sort of testimony that is gathered from folks who have participated in this program is itself still under the same influence of coercion that I'm talking about with the forced choice in the first place. If the person that has legal authority to ruffle you to the ground if they see fit comes to you and asks you, what do you think of the program that we're putting you in, like, that's still nonetheless a coercive situation. So while I'm interested in hearing that testimony as well, I want to go ahead and make clear that it's not going to give us the clearest picture of whether or not this program is beneficial ultimately for the folks that take part. But with that being said, I'm okay with putting this on hold and seeing what another program of the kind that Commissioner Link is describing might look like for folks that take part in this.
All right. I've got right now a motion on the floor and a second. I'm going to circle back to Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, just you're right, Mariah. It just brings us back to the fact that what we have is a statewide problem, a state policy problem, and we're probably not going to be able to solve it locally, but we need to try to do whatever we can. And I think it deserves time and energy. Maybe we can get our state delegation, at least some of them, to put some energy into this, because we need to make them aware. I don't know if they are. We need to make them aware. I mean, I'm going to take it on myself to do that, and I'm sure that you guys will do the same. We need to make them all alert to the issue we have with free state inmate labor and no opportunity to pay them or otherwise compensate them for their time. This has been a very valuable discussion. I appreciate it.
All right, we've got a motion to table in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on then to item number 14. This is expansion of the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission Arts and Community Grants amid COVID pandemic. I know Commissioner Denson, you'd submitted a CDO, so I'm going to ask you to kick off conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm very excited to see and that the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission acted so quickly and creatively to find that extra $15,000 to offer more grants. As we know, this pandemic is affecting our entire population, our entire workforce, including artists, musicians, and creatives, especially in this town that is kind of, famous for those artists and musicians. It pains us all to see them and all the other workers in our town struggle. And so I see this as a great opportunity for us to be able to use some of that resiliency package money to get it closer into the hands of some of the people that need it. So with my CDO that Commissioner Neesmith has signed on to, and I appreciate, would add $85,000 from the resiliency package funding into this, making the total amount $100,000. And with speaking with the members of the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission, they are very excited about this and support it, and see that if we are able to move this forward with the CDO of $100,000, they will then be able to offer, they believe, 50 awards for $2,000 a piece. And this will just also have the benefit of creating a lot of fantastic art for our entire community to benefit from. So definitely a win-win. And I'll go ahead and make a motion for us to adopt the CDO.
May I have the pleasure of seconding it, Tim? Tim, thank you for the work on this. Thank you for giving me some credit for it. This is, gosh, I wish we could do more, but it's a start, and I hope we can turn these kinds of things into some sustainable programs. They pay back in many ways. They employ people. They bring people to our community who buy things and pay taxes and fall in love with our town. And I second.
All right. Further discussion? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioners Denson and Neesmith for taking the lead on this. This is extremely valuable, and $15,000 isn't going to go a long way, but $100,000 can really provide the artists, musicians, performers in this community with some opportunity to regain what's been lost in this pandemic. I mean, folks are not able to play out. They're not able to have their art shows where they could sell work. A lot of folks in the creative community are taking a huge hit, and it's a hit financially, but also a hit spiritually. Being an artist or musician or performer, it's not a job, it's a calling. So this can give some hope to some of the folks in our community, and be a greater benefit to the entire community. We all know the value that the arts bring to the community and to our lives personally. So I'm really excited that we were able to use this extra money and get some people some work doing what they love.
Commissioner Parker?
Oh, I'm sorry. My hand is still up from the previous motion, the previous item.
Oh, no worries. Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I also am glad to see this coming forward, and I'm glad that I think it might be the last little bit of the prosperity package that was found to add into this. I think I'm glad that this got put together in time to be on the agenda. So thank you guys for doing that.
All right, so I've got a motion from Commissioner Denson, a second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to get some support for some community artists out the door. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're moving on to item number 15, which is clarification of authority of appointed and elected officials under the personnel system. In some ways, as you've seen in the agenda report and had in the earlier conversation, this is a vestige of the early formation of the unified government and the relative responsibilities of the manager and other charter officers. So I see Commissioner Neesmith's hand.
Yeah, this has confused the public a great deal because there's so much legalese there, but as I explained to a few folks, it's really quite simple. And that is, it clarifies the fact that employees who work for elected officials work for those elected officials. They don't work for the manager. So all of the employee reviews and so forth are done by their organization, their department, with no responsibility by the manager, but still with our HR department there in case they're needed. So I'll move for approval.
Mr. Mayor, can I read the ordinance, please?
Please do, Attorney Drake. I appreciate it.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to elected or appointed officials and for other purposes.
I'll second.
All right. Any other comment on this item? All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Moving on to item 16, this is calendar year 20 pavement maintenance. I'd like Manager Williams to sort of kick off the conversation with some of the work that staff's had underway on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the purpose of the general public's information, so each year, the Mayor and Commission, we put together several sources of funds, including general fund dollars, which include property taxes and sales taxes, funds that were approved through the SPLOST 2011, and certainly funds from the T-SPLOST 2018, and we pair that with funds from the state, the local maintenance improvement grant program. We put all that together to advance the repaving and the maintenance of our roads. And so each year, earlier this year, the Mayor and Commission looked at a number of roads proposed for maintenance and resurfacing. And those were based on ratings that were for a long time given by a human being, a staff person. And this past year, we've transitioned to an automated assessment tool, which we're getting through. And so that we've got a number of roads that were rated and approved, and part of this also is based on the deficit list that was a part of the T-SPLOST conversation. And the action tonight is to approve the award and bid to a company to begin the paving here in June, and that usually runs through October. There were several questions about this, the pavement maintenance project. And the traffic calming measures, any speed tables that are currently on a street to be resurfaced will be replaced. But if we add new ones, that will add cost to the program. And speed tables are sort of part and parcel with the neighborhood traffic management process. And I think a question that was from the agenda setting process, well, how do we add new neighborhoods into that? And that would be something that if we could work with one of the two committees to revisit the neighborhood traffic management process, we're glad to do that and have y'all take a look at the thresholds and see how you want to address that. I know that another one was a question that we had was the potential candidates for restriping to better accommodate bike lanes. And I did share with the mayor and commission some pavement program recommendations for bike lanes and other pedestrian improvements, quieting streets from our bike and pedestrian coordinator, Hillary Essig. And I just want to be clear about that. Those are things that are being proposed, and those are things that would be paid for out of our bike ped T-SPLOS fund. So they would not take funds away from the resurfacing, repaving that's being proposed, but they would be done in tandem. So we're taking advantage of the obvious best time to deal with these things. So I just wanted to share those things. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me that.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Moving on to Commissioner Link.
Yeah, thank you, Manager Williams, for sharing that and for the documents you shared with us this week, kind of outlining some of the streets on here and what the possible improvements could be as far as bike ped and restriping. I'm glad to know that, this is on the radar and that, through this repavement process, we're likely to see some real improvements on quite a few neighborhood streets and improve our bike ped network. So I suggest that we approve this.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Link. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Herod. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, the problem is we need to do all we can to keep the selection of streets to be repaved or repaired non-political. It can't be about how loud a commissioner screams, and I'm guilty of that. It's got to be subjective. It's a subjective problem. The transparency of it, moving to an automated method, is certainly an improvement. But I have to say, Mr. Manager, it's not quite there yet. The questions still arise. My street's been rated to be improved for 3 years, and still it's not on the list. Why is that? So I don't know how, you know more about the process than I do, but I hope for next year we can make it as transparent as we possibly can, as logical and as clear as we possibly can. I like the idea of doing the striping at the opportune time from a different pot of funds. I think that's very, very important. We don't want to take away one neighborhood's need to have their streets improved because of another neighborhood's need to have a different kind of striping. So it's good to have these things separate. So we need to make sure we've got enough money in both pots as we go forward. So thank you.
Commissioner Wright, is your hand up for this item?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Manager Williams, I had talked to you a little on the phone and was going to circle back to the opportunity that we might have with the asphalt pricing being at a record low, and to learn that if this bid includes that kind of current low rate, or does it appear that we might, what would be the process for us on this package deal coming up with potential to do some more roads?
And that's a great point you make, Commissioner Wright. So it is true that this bid came in under budget. So we have several $100,000 of extra funds. We think we can get through the list. And what I would like to propose is that in this next voting cycle, we bring forth some additional streets to take advantage of this extra funds. And we will have this discussion again, and we can go through this and we can explain, Commissioner Neesmith, why some are on and some are off, and try to revisit this methodology again. But that's good news for everybody that, there's a lot of bad news going on right now, but we've got a great bid. We think we can pave more roads, and we want to do that sooner in this engagement with the contractor so we can take care of all those efficiencies of adjacencies, things of that nature.
Put my roads on.
Wait a minute, Neesmith. Thank you for that information, and I do hope that that can include the streets that are associated with what's currently being done, because if the machines are already in that location, the one example that you had of some areas off Davis Street and Davis Estates, because if the equipment's already there and they are ranking in this same number, remind me what PPI, the acronym is for on the rating system?
It's a pavement index.
The pavement index, okay. And just making sure that the pavement index is, with this change, is that that we get that conversion accurately, because I think the street that I asked about was in the 40s, and it looks like anyway, let's just make sure we're getting the transition accurately converted.
When we convey some of the recommendations on the streets, we will attempt to, because I understand, and there was some confusion there, and what that was adding to the confusion for everybody is the rating scales are different. The outcome was the same. The road's in poor condition. In this pavement performance index, we need to orient you to the new scoring so it makes more sense. You can explain it to your constituents as well. And so when we bring forth this next agenda item in this next cycle, we will take care to try to explain those concepts better.
Perfect.
Commissioner Wright, I'll just make sure that we can set up a virtual paper, rock, scissors between you and Commissioner Neesmith, and you guys can battle it out for each neighborhood gets the benefits from the excess funds we'll have available.
I appreciate that. We'll get it right.
All right. So I think we have a motion on the floor. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed? All right. Thanks, everyone. We are going to move on to item number 17, the second Firefly Trail item of this evening. And this is for sub-project 2. So, again, I think we referenced this earlier as being approximately from the current termini at the loop to Indian Hills or Hancock Industrial Area, and including a segment of recycled water main. Happy for anyone to jump in that would like to.
So moved that we approve the item.
Second.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Harrod. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All opposed? All right. Hearing none, we are moving on to another pedestrian improvement, the West Broad Sidewalk Gap, where we've been closing a number of segments just west of the intersection with Hawthorne and Alps Road. And I see Commissioner Neesmith.
That's right. That splits Commissioner Hamby's district and mine right in half. And I'll just go ahead and move for approval.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to thank the manager for some clarification on this project. It was hard to kind of see what was going on the conceptual drawing, especially on my teeny tiny laptop. But yeah, I'm excited to see this crosswalk going from every single corner and handicapped accessibility, and that sidewalk being put in that will hopefully encourage people to cross this road at the crosswalk, because there have been several pedestrian fatalities in that immediate area just in recent memory. So I'm excited to see this going forward, and thanks to staff for all their work on it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're moving on to updating the process for receiving and reviewing audit reports. I'm going to ask Commissioner Link to kick off the conversation, as I think there were a couple of different models that were conceived of. And so if as audit committee chair, you could begin the conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to ask that we go ahead and remove this item from the agenda and send it back to... Thank you. Yeah, there seems to be cross communications, and I feel like when the committee met and discussed this we were a little out of sorts. It was shortly after we'd gone out into lockdown. It was our first meeting via web, and I'm not sure we got our communication straight. So I think we need to look at it some more. Now that we've heard both from the auditor and the manager more directly, we need to discuss this all over again.
Commissioner Link, would you like this sent back to committee, or would you like this just put on hold for full commission consideration?
I'd like to send it back to committee.
All right. So motion from Commissioner Link to send back to committee, second from Commissioner Edwards. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That item goes back for additional committee work. Item number 20 is first reading of an ordinance under the home rule powers granted to Athens-Clarke County to amend the charter of the unified government. I think the language around this has caused just a little bit of confusion for the public because the term police powers is in the discussion, but this doesn't actually reference the police department or our law enforcement powers. So I'm going to ask Attorney Drake to discuss the origin of this item. As in the midst of the pandemic, we've tried to use all available tools to us to make sure we can deploy some resources to the community. So Attorney Drake, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first, I'll read the ordinance. An ordinance under the home rule powers granted to Athens-Clarke County to amend the charter of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to the police power of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and for other purposes. And currently, the charter reads in subsection 15 of section 8-114 with respect to police power. The charter reads as follows: to exercise the police power for the public safety and well-being of the citizens of the unified government. And the purpose of this amendment is to add the following language, which I'll read, which makes it more clear. And the importance here is to focus on the words well-being of the citizens of the unified government. And we clarify what that well-being means so that we will have to be more explicitly clear as to what authority the mayor and commission have related to being able to provide assistance, specifically the type of assistance that's needed in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic that is currently affecting our community and this country. So we would add the following language to expand on that term well-being as follows: without limitation, the unified government is authorized to make contributions out of funds appropriated therefore to eligible organizations for purely charitable purposes as defined by OCGA section 36-1-19.1D, to be used for the payment of costs related to the relief of indigent, impoverished, or distressed citizens of the unified government in order to promote the public safety and well-being of the citizens of the unified government, by thereby preventing the spread of disease, promoting the welfare of its citizens, including particularly children and families, and mitigating the burdens of government arising from emergency sickness and illnesses among the citizens of the unified government. We, as you're aware, work with our outside counsel who's recommended this change to make sure that we're on solid legal footing, or to make it more clear, related to our programs we're implementing related to providing relief for those impoverished individuals being affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
And Attorney Drake, as I understand it, this will get 2 readings, and after 2 formal public readings, we'll be able to add this language to the charter. Is that right?
That's correct. Under the home rule process, it requires 2 adoptions, as well as a notice will be running in the paper, Athens Herald, for 3 consecutive weeks as required by statute. And then with the second adoption, this would become a part of the charter of the unified government.
Great. Questions for the attorney? Commissioner Neesmith?
You're muted.
Okay. That term, police power, certainly is loaded with emotion, but let me just read you a definition that I think puts it in context. Police power describes the basic right of governments to make laws and regulations for the benefit of their communities. So it's not about putting people in jail, although that is part of it. This is more about how we use our resources for the health and well-being of our citizens.
I think that's accurate, Commissioner. Other questions for the attorney? So, Attorney Drake, we don't need to cast a vote tonight. We just need to have this on the agenda for a reading. Is that correct?
No, Your Honor, we have to adopt it tonight and then at the next succeeding regular meeting. So
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes.
All right, entertain a motion for adoption, which we'll do again in a month.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith. I think second was from Commissioner Harrod. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have just one item of new business. This is extension of a moratorium on shareable dockless mobility devices. Given that some committee work is continuing on this, Commissioner Wright, did you want to speak to this as committee chair?
I just wanted to applaud Deborah's eagle eye, or maybe it was Sherry out of the attorney's office, who noticed that June 4th was when our current moratorium would run out. And so I applaud them for noting that so that we could have the opportunity to extend it, because the LRC has not gotten the feedback. The Mayor and Commission sent it to Athens in motion for their feedback, and so that hasn't come to committee yet. So this gives us a chance to do that, as well as LRC is working on things that are a little bit more relevant than that right now that we want to move forward. The non-discrimination, as well as the loud and unruly houses. So this gives us time to put this low priority thing moving forward, but focusing on the higher priority stuff. So I appreciate if everybody supports us moving this ban forward.
Is that a motion?
And that's a motion to accept this extension.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, can I read it?
Please do, Attorney Drake.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to shareable dockless mobility devices and for other purposes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, seeing none, motion carries.
Did we have to vote for suspension of rules, or did I miss that?
Oh, I appreciate you catching that, Commissioner Wright. We need to vote for suspension of rules, and then we'll vote again. Entertain a motion for suspension of rules for this item of new business on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion for suspension of rules from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
So now
opposed? Any opposed to suspension of rules? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain again a motion for adoption of this extension of the moratorium.
I move that we adopt the extension on the moratorium on the shareable dockless devices.
All right, again, motion from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed for extending the moratorium? All right, moratorium is extended. All right, I've got a very, very brief report, then I'm going to move on to the manager, auditor, attorney, and commissioners. Just want to thank everybody for your continued diligence throughout the community. I do want to make note, as I've mentioned to several individuals, that the epidemiological advisory group is going to be meeting tomorrow, and front and center on our plate is going to be discussing how both as an organization we move forward in the weeks ahead, and the advice that, given the science that we have assembled around the table, we're able to provide to the community around safety and continued activity in as safe a manner as possible. I also want to thank Commissioner Parker, who joined us last week on the community conversation to field questions, help field questions from the public. Tomorrow's program will be a pre-taped program. We had Commissioner Mark Butler, who was able to join us yesterday. And so it'll be a relatively brief program, and Commissioner Butler talks about what both employers and employees can do around making sure that they're claiming unemployment benefits in through the best means possible, using sort of the best routes that they can do that. And then I'm going to be calling one of my fellow commissioners to join me next week, a week from tomorrow, at the next program. So commissioners, be on the lookout. I'm going to go ahead and move over and ask the manager if there's anything he'd like to report this evening.
No, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to the auditor, Auditor Maddox.
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to the attorney. Anything, Attorney Drake?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right. I'm going to move on to commissioners. We'll go in reverse order tonight for a good time. I'll start with Commissioner Hamby, and then we'll move over to Commissioner Davenport. And at the end, if somebody could provide a motion to enter regular session, exit regular session and enter executive session at the very end. So, Commissioner Hamby.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I don't have much tonight, but I would like to say I think your updates, periodic updates, and video things have been well received. I've been sharing them a little bit, and people certainly appreciate the communication efforts that are out there with regards to this. And I will ask though if at the meeting you're having tomorrow, if maybe we could get an update on that we could also share, because I think that would be of high interest to folks in our districts. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to briefly answer, absolutely, we'll provide an update after tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thornton?
I don't have anything, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Harrod?
Just a couple of things. As some of the public will already know this, but a lot of people who are watching will not. But we had some very good news about some jobs on the job front this morning. Announcement coming that we're going to be getting 200 plus nicely paying jobs, about $260 million in local investment from RWDC Industries, who basically make knives and forks and those kinds of things that are, as I understand it, biodegradable. This is a nice collaboration between the local government, unified government, the state, and then also the University of Georgia, as this has come from research and development that has been done on campus. So I know that for us, we've known about it for a while. It's been in the works, but it finally was made public today. And so I think that's really a testament to a great partnership, working locally with ourselves and the state and the University of Georgia. So that's great news. And then the only other thing I was going to say is that I hope people are still washing their hands and social distancing and staying safe out there. A lot of people are doing the right thing, but there are still some people who think that they are invincible and that they cannot transmit it to grandma. And I hope that they maybe reconsider their position in that regard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank my colleagues for the symbolic solidarity at the top of this meeting where we all wore our face masks, showing citizens that this is the epidemiological recommendation currently, that every time you go out in public, the very least you can do to protect your fellow Athenians is to wear a face mask. The governor has tied our hands and kept us from acting. You know, we were the first municipality on the East Coast to enact a shelter in place, but now the governor has stepped in and has tied our hands and kept us from passing any other binding policy. So all we can do at this point, though we're exploring every possible avenue, is to provide encouragement and social pressure for the very best behavior. It's clear that the case rate is growing. The cases are going up every day in Athens, and so we're not out of the woods yet. We have to do everything we can to encourage wearing these face masks, which cut down on the transmission of this highly contagious virus. The more responsible we act together, the shorter this pandemic will last. So please do your part, citizens, and know that everyone here on the commission is working as hard as possible to try to figure out every possible way that we can ensure that this community is as safe as possible. We did act recently with the opening of the Athens Farmers Market. Face masks will be required at that Athens Farmers Market at Bishop Park. That's one of the few places where we were able to act, but we're certainly exploring more. And, you know, a face covering can just be as simple as a handkerchief worn over your face, pulling your t-shirt over your nose. Just any sort of cloth covering that covers your nose and your mouth will help cut down on the rate of transmission for this highly contagious coronavirus. So thank you, citizens, for doing your part, doing what you can, and supporting our local small businesses who certainly are doing their best to hang on right now. And I'd like to salute my colleagues for moving forward with the Joint Development Authority with Winterville so that we can also provide some small local business relief and some revolving loan programs. So let's keep doing everything we can so that we can get through to the other side of this pandemic. Thanks, everybody.
Commissioner Neesmith.
People in the businesses of Athens-Clarke County, the way that they have responded, you have responded to this pandemic. I also want to reiterate what Commissioner Edwards says. This face mask isn't to protect me. It's to protect you from me. So yeah, you're right. You wear it. It doesn't protect you very much. But what it does is it keeps your spittle from going into the air and landing in my mouth or my grandma's mouth or whomever. So please keep it up. I want to thank Commissioner Denson for the leadership on the cultural affairs. It was a mere $15,000. It helps. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. And we have to stay the course, folks. There are people who do this technology of scouring the social media to try to find trends. One of the trends that was recently found is that Clarke County is one of the counties that's due for another spike. I hope it's not true, but it's a warning that we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Thank you.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Neesmith. And on that, the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission's Arts and Community Program, just want to put out there that they actually currently have a call right now for slightly smaller grants. So artists and creatives can go ahead and apply now at athensculturalaffairs.org. That first round, the applications have to be received by May 20th. Then after that, this larger round that we just approved will go into effect shortly after that. And another thing I wanted to bring up, I know there was a lot of talk, and Commissioner Parker and I worked on a resolution dealing with the jail population and trying to ensure that they are protected also and being kept safe and healthy. And one of the things that we like to see is the ability to increase and maximize the number of people who could be released. And I appreciate Mayor Gertz kind of reaching out to some folks and having a discussion about this issue. And I would just like to go ahead and request that maybe if we could have a work session, have this expedited pretty soon in our work session schedule, that we could have with our local judges and with the sheriff, along with the district attorney and solicitor, everybody, we could have this conversation publicly and just kind of get to the bottom of it to find out what we could do and just try to maximize those efforts. So I would request that. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is just some important notices on the election coming up, that everything's been moved to June 9th. Our elections have gotten very complicated. And just to point out to folks that there is, if you are voting with an absentee ballot, we have installed in front of the Board of Elections office next to City Hall on Washington Street. There's now been installed a box that you can securely drop your ballot off into. If you don't feel comfortable mailing it or don't have postage, you can drop that off there. But on that topic of postage, I would like to see and ask the rest of my fellow commissioners and the mayor here if, and we can work on this in the coming days, about possibly supporting a resolution that says that we support the intent to reimburse the Postal Service for postage on ballots that were mailed without a stamp. Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. Postal Service spokesman Rick Beatty said, and I quote, "The Postal Service is steadfast in our commitment to support democracy. We will not exclude a voter's right to vote by delaying a time-sensitive ballot because of insufficient postage." And he went on to say that their process is if those ballots are mailed without postage, they will go ahead and deliver them and then later bill the county government for that postage. So I would love it if we could go ahead and pass a resolution saying that we support that. We have the intent to do that so we can make sure that the Postal Service is delivering every single ballot, no matter if there's postage on there or not. And that is all I have. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Wright.
Hey there, everybody. I appreciate all the input, and I did want to make sure everybody was aware of the 3-page memorandum that we received from Judge Norris. He was on this call, on this meeting earlier. I don't know if he still is, but it was giving us the Athens-Clarke County Court's update on safety and jail release efforts relating to the COVID pandemic. And it's got a lot of information here for us, but just as a snapshot, the jail population on March 1 was 427. As of May 4, it's 226. It's a 47% reduction due to the efforts that have been going on, whether it's high-risk category or the other areas that we are legally able to address that. And then the courts, there's lots of information about that too. So I'm not sure if we could get that condensed, some of that information, and on the website for others to read, so that that can be dispersed and help people understand those details. I want to compliment staff, the unified government, and their efforts for the communications that are out there. There's so many different areas for us to address during the pandemic, and then communicating that is just as important as well. And that's it's going really well considering what we're dealing with. So I think staff is to be applauded for that as well as food distributions. There was I was helped some volunteers, about several of our neighborhood leaders. We were at Parkview Homes today distributing some food, and it was interesting how all the different scarves, the ways that everybody's having their masks, the homemade and bought, and social distancing while still helping serve some people was ever present. The conditions that we have to work in, but if everybody will just keep it up, it'll help us all, the community as well. But that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I want to also talk about the extreme importance of wearing a face covering when you're out in pretty much any public environment. The governor's order basically only mandates that certain employees in these service industries wear their face coverings, but that does very little to protect those, because if you are in close proximity to someone who is not wearing a face covering, it's more likely that their spittle and any virus that they're shedding from their mouth and nose could enter into the gaps in your mask, in your face covering. So even a very loosely folded scarf just draped over your nose and tied behind your head helps tremendously. If every single person out there were to just do this, there would be extremely limited transmission in the public. And remember that anybody can carry this virus and not even know it. I have several family members in New York City who have gone through the virus, and it's terrible. It's horrible. Even if you're young and healthy and get through it, you you don't want to suffer through that. My cousin had pus coming out of his eyes. And, you know, and it's extremely fatal for folks who have pre-existing conditions, and it's taking a tremendous, horrible toll on our communities of color. So I want to talk a little bit more about masks. There are all kinds of things out there on the internet. There are these cute little homemade ones that are like, you know, fit very closely, and these are pretty protective. I made this, and, you know, I sew, but not everybody can do that. You know, a scarf like this, a bandana, just about everybody has bandanas kicking around their house. Fold it in half like a triangle, tie it around your face, and you're good to go. You can cut up a t-shirt. You can get about 5 masks out of a single t-shirt. Cut the squares out of the front and the back and fold them in half into a triangle and tie that around your face. You can take sleeve of a t-shirt and cut some strips and loops and tie them, and simply put that over your face with loops like this. Adjust it a little bit, but that'll help. It's way better than nothing. So you can even take the top, what's left of the top, and, you know, put a loop through that and tie it over, and end up wearing it like that. Whatever you can do around your house. The sleeve of a men's shirt, cut that off and fold it together, tuck it inside, and put rubber bands, put it through some rubber bands, and have that go over your face. Even constructing a mask out of a paper towel. This is 2 paper towels folded in 3s and then folded in on a couple of rubber bands. Even something as simple as this can be a temporary mask, something you can easily just throw away, wear for, you know, 45 minutes or so while you do your grocery shopping or run into the restaurant to pick up your food. That does just fine for a quick temporary fix. Or you have a piece of pantyhose kicking around your house and you want to just put that over your face and tuck a napkin up in there. That'll do in a pinch. Just whatever you can do to cover your own mouth and nose to protect those all around you. And I hope that we can pass a resolution strongly urging the public, all members of the public, to wear some kind of face covering in any public environment where they might come in any proximity to other people, especially in interior environments. The governor's emergency order only mandated it for certain members, certain employees in some of the businesses, but he did issue a press release recommending it. And the CDC recommends it. Other communities across the nation have passed mandatory mask rules. The city of Atlanta passed a resolution in early April. It's something we really need to do, and we need to get the word out. People obviously have taken the governor's rescission of the lockdown as going back to normal, and it's not. Every other nation that's been through this pandemic ahead of us and is returning to normal, it's a very gradual return, and face masks are always part of that return, because if we aren't extremely careful, we're going to see a resurgence sooner rather than later, and we're going to end up back in lockdown in the middle of the summer, and there will be no football season. We won't be able to go back to school. You know, it'll only prolong the pain. And I want to urge everyone to take this seriously and reach out to your friends and neighbors. And I hope that this government will be implementing very soon some serious educational programmings to get that word out. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Link. And before we enter executive session, after we hear from Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Davenport, I'll have Manager Williams update us on the staff-driven mask making. So moving forward to Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to let everyone know about 2 opportunities to get fed if you're hungry, if your neighbors are hungry. This Thursday, the EADC is doing drive-by food distribution. If you drive up in your car, we will put a box of food in the back trunk. That's from 10 to 12 on Thursday. As well, every Monday, I've joined EADC for food distribution from about 12:30 to 2. So we're just going out in LEB and giving out food So if you live in the East Athens area, you know people that are hungry or have neighbors or elderly folks who live with you or live around you who might need some help, please get my contact info off the website and text me or call me. I'll be sure to bring some food by. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has been part of the Care Not Cages campaign to help ensure that we prevent a breakout of COVID-19 in jail. I do look forward to working with the judiciary and Mayor Gertz to see what resources the local government can provide to help folks that are reentering from our jail, make sure that they are able to transition safely and healthily. And that's it.
All right, Commissioner Davenport.
Yes. First of all, I would like to have Commissioner Link to do a YouTube video because it was very informative. Thank you, Commissioner Link. But as Commissioner Harris said, one of the other things that people need to do is also wash their hands. But I'm also doing a quick PSA. This is a face mask. Make sure that the face mask covers your nose because I don't want to see this. You know, that's not recommended. It does no good. You know, so I keep hearing that people just cover their mouth. It's pointless. Make sure it covers your nose and your mouth as well. And most important, and also equally important, if you have to go out into public, if you have to go anywhere, please make sure you wash your hands. Make sure you have some hand sanitizer because, you know, you can easily touch a surface that could be contaminated and, you know, even with a face mask on and, you know, potentially touch your face and not be aware that, you know, you may have contacted, you know, COVID-19. So please also just wash your hands. Do a quick PSA for my Black people. You know, I'm extremely concerned about some of the things I'm seeing in our community. I'm tired of Black people being number one with diabetes. I'm tired of Black people being number one with high blood pressure and strokes. Let's not be number one for COVID-19. So please, you know, we can, you know, let's take every precaution that we can to make sure that we, you know, that we just do our due diligence and, you know, take this thing serious. And at the end of the day, regardless if you're Republican, Democrat, white, or Black, the disease does not care who you are. It's just going to infect, not affect. But also, two shout outs to, I'm trying to get two shout outs to Winterville. Thanks to Winterville City Council, as Commissioner Edwards has said, for the Joint Development Authority. And I would like to thank you all the citizens of Athens-Clarke County, as well as the businesses who, you know, who went through or are still going through this trial, and some of the businesses who remain to stay closed. But, you know, just from the bottom of every commissioners and every, you know, employee of ACC, we want to thank everybody for, you know, doing your due diligence and doing a good job. But another shout out to Winterville. The city of Winterville is I'm make sure I got this right, has a community market that's starting. You can put in your orders by Wednesday at cityofwinterville.com/marigold market, and you can pick up your food. You can pick up your food at Saturday, this Saturday, May 9th from 9 to 12 at Pitter Park. So it's exciting to see City of Winterville have their own food market. And with that, I would like to move to exit regular session and enter into executive session.
I'll second that.
You're muted, Kelly.
Got a motion from Commissioner Davenport, second from Commissioner Wright.
Then, Mr. Mayor, if I might, just real quick while we're talking about the mask, I'm sorry. I did want to show you this mask, which was made by ACC employees, and just tell you very quickly, if you'll give me 60 seconds about that, because I'm really proud of them, and I'm going to share something with you very quickly. Let's see. So what we have is the staff has really come together. We need masks for our employees. And what we did not want to do was compete with the need that the healthcare workers have. So our employees have really stepped up and have partnered with the Charm. Shirtworks made a donation, and we've put together kits on how to make these masks for our employees to put together. We had a request of departments on their immediate need and their long-term need. They intend to make 3,000 masks to give each of our employees at least 2, and perhaps some for our elections personnel coming up. Fabric was donated and also purchased. There are people, many employees who have signed up to help make these masks. And some of this work has been going on up at the Linden House. And we have folks, leisure services staff here pictured making kits and masks for others. And we're tracking the ones that are made and received and passed out. And I'm extremely proud of our staff stepping up in so many ways during this response, but I'm especially proud for coming in just in time with the masks needed for our workers as well. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to share that.
Thank you, Manager Williams, and certainly thanks to staff for all the work they're doing every day. Earlier in the program, Commissioner Parker referenced the diligence of our transit staff, certainly all of our frontline public safety folks, the police department, sheriff's department, firefighters, and others have just been wonderful through all of this. We do have a motion to exit public session and enter executive session. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It's 8:06 by my clock. If everybody will just take 4 minutes, and I'll be back like at 8:10. That'll give public information a couple minutes to log off the public, and so we can begin the executive session at that point.